Is it Saturday night? It's Saturday night. I haven't... So that means I spent all day Thursday, all day Friday, and a good chunk of today. No, really 2 days. I spent 2 days thinking about dirty tricks. And it was a journey that I went on. And I would like to share that journey with you and tell you about where I've sort of landed. Just as a sort of little side note, I did all of this with the help of the community of people that's hanging around. Listening to other people's ideas and checking my own ideas against other people. And I'm a generally open person, so I'm pretty flexible in the way that I think about things. Like, I'm not opposed to new... In fact, I actively seek out new ideas and information and things, right? So, take that for weird brag, Moss. Let's talk about dirty tricks. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. Okay, we're good. We're fine. Thanks my patrons, Panda, Sprawley, Von Tome, Christian Lentz, Banglades, Objective 2, and Zed Ramirez. Wyberian makes good art. Buy some dice. Still working on 10 subs by 4th, so you can be part of that, but plugging yourself is always so odd. Okay, so there's 2 ways I think that you can think about dirty tricks. The first is as a planned around core part of your strategy and your army. So when you think about dirty tricks in this way, you are thinking, I'm going to use this dirty trick on this unit, like say, I'm going to sneak a unit over here, and after I've snuck it, I'm going to do these other things, and then it'll be good and strong. But if that doesn't happen, if I fail that sneak, then my army doesn't do what it's supposed to do, and I feel like I'm doing nothing. So it feels like Durthu, or I should just use orc examples. It feels like Gobsprak not casting spells or unbinding spells. It's like if you're thinking about dirty tricks in that way, they feel kind of weak and bad. That's where I started thinking about them. So, for example, there's only a 55% chance that both your first and your second dirty trick are successful. Right? The first one has like an 87% chance or whatever, and the second one has a reduced chance. But together, the chance that both are successful is only 55%. So 45% of the time you're going to fail the first one or the second one, and you will more likely fail the second one, right? But still, together, it's only 55%. So it feels bad. And then for 3 of them, there's only a 28% chance that you get all 3 of your first 3 that you roll for. So it doesn't feel great to rely on them. So the second way to think about them is more like in this extreme sort of way, is where you're going to spam them. You're going to roll for all of them all the time, and you're going to get a whole bunch of them over the course of the game, and when you do get them, they're going to be good most of the time, with the exception of lethal surprise. I think lethal surprise is really you'll only use it when that particular situation occurs. But Venom, Crested Weapon, and Sneaky, I think you sort of do them all the time, right? You know, like you're going to roll them all the time. And the Strike Last one, I think you'll be rolling a lot. You'll probably roll it on average once per battle round, at least that much, maybe twice, depending on what the board state looks like. So if you think about dirty tricks in that way, as more like we're just going to roll the whole bunch and get some, they start to feel a lot better. They start to feel way more powerful. What else have I got here? And because the effects are really good. Strike Last is really good. And the movement, you can't interact with the Sneak dirty trick. You can't interact with it. It's not a spell. It's not tied to a hero. It's not on a war scroll, right? It just happens all the time, and you roll, and there's nothing your opponent can do about it to stop you. So there's no bad matchup for it. It's just always going to be there and good and useful. So it's like quite good, you know. And Venom Crested Weapons is good, right? And Strike Last is a powerful effect. I'm working on a Gut Rippers video, and I think Gut Rippers are significantly better than they were because of that dirty trick. That changes the way that they feel entirely. And another way that dirty tricks are really powerful, in a way that I didn't really think about before, is the mind game that you're going to be playing on your opponents. So your opponent's going to sit there and look at you across the board and say, so you're telling me that every time I charge you, no, because you can only attempt one dirty trick a phase, right? So you're saying that every combat you can pick one of my units and roll, and on a 5-up it just strikes last, and you just pick a unit anywhere, and there's no way of turning that off. There's no spell, there's no hero, there's no nothing. It's just like you just at least 1 in 3 chance that I get strike last. Your opponent's gonna hate that. That is so bloody morky. That's so morky. You're sitting there looking at this. Your opponent is sitting there looking at you and just saying like, well, I'm screwed. What am I gonna do? And you're telling me that like you're just gonna pick units up and move them, and there's nothing I can do to interact with it. They're just gonna bounce around the battlefield. It's like I charge up and oh no, and you can pull them out of combat. You can pull them out of combat. From what I remember from 3rd edition, teleporting units out of combat is a really strong ability. You lost a bunch of your Gut Rippers, no problem. Yank, rally, let's go. Or maybe rally's not a thing, but you get my point. You can Venom Encrusted Weapon something else, and have another screen where you need it, or snag an objective, or bloody hell, put it behind them. Yep, seems good to me. So here is some examples of how I think Venom Encrusted Weapons is going to actually play out when you really play a game. So I broke it down into 2 different scenarios. One is if you go first, and the other is if you go second. And right away, they're going to be stronger if you go first, I think, by a fair bit. But we'll see how it plays out, right? So if you go first, you're probably going to cast Venom Encrusted Weapons. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say that. You're going to think about casting Venom Encrusted Weapons if you think on your opponent's turn they're going to be coming in to get you. So, as an example, if you are playing against what is presently Big Wah, if you're playing against Big Wah, you think to yourself, they're definitely going to, on their turn, buff up and teleport a unit of pigs, and they're going to charge into me. So the way that you deploy and the way that you think about the game is you say to yourself, I'm going to deploy in such a way that really this is the only side that they can come at me, or maybe there's like you have a big block of Gut Rippers in the front, right? And it's like if you're going to come at this unit, it's going to have Venom Encrusted Weapons. Or if maybe if you come at me from this side, I know you're going to try to charge in with those Gorgruntas, so I'm going to give this unit of Bolt Boys over here Venom Encrusted Weapons so I can shoot you on your turn. Right? But so like if you think that Venom Encrusted Weapons is going to have play on turn 1, you cast it. If you don't think so, like if they're playing a defensive army and you don't think that they're going to engage with you on their turn, then you might also skip it, because the next one you're going to cast is most likely sneaky. You're going to try to sneak. And you can do this with a 2-up if you think it's really important, or you can do Venom Encrusted Weapons and then you can try sneak up on a 3-up, and then you can try it again on a 4-up. And between a 3-up and a 4-up, the chances that you get at least one of them are fairly good. So you can kind of start not relying on it, but sort of think about like how you're going to use it, because you'll probably get it in the first battle round, and then from there you're going to use Lethal Surprise or Racket if they're relevant, right? But again, if you're being alpha struck, you could also do a plan like this, where you're like, I'm going to 2-up Venom Encrusted Weapons, and then I'm going to do nothing, and then I'm going to 3-up Noisy Racket, right? That's like a play that you can do where you're just saying to yourself, I'm not going to move things around the board. I'm just going to stay in my little castle and keep tight, right? And then maybe Lethal Surprise and then Racket you. So if they're coming into Gut Rippers, right? It's like, well, this is, of course, if you're being alpha struck, I'm going to Venom Encrusted Weapons, and then when they charge in, I'm going to, let's say that they have the charge, I'm going to Lethal Surprise, and then I'm going to Noisy Racket, and then the Gut Rippers are going to, on a 3-up, give you -1 to hit, right? Like, suddenly it's like, wow, that's a lot of debuffs. Suddenly, that's a lot of debuffs. Feels really good, right? And this is, of course, if you're going first. Then on your second turn, you're going to be doing more the pattern of action as if you are being alpha struck. It's going to be venom encrusted weapons, sneaking if you need them, if you feel like you need them, and then if you're leaning more towards the lethal surprise, noisy racket side of things, then that's where you'll save them until the end. So I feel like there's going to be this in the middle, like double sneaky opportunity, right? Because you probably don't need noisy racket on your turn unless you are unless the pace of combat's getting out of control for you, right? Like you're fighting twice on your turn. Then you might consider doing like venom encrusted weapons and then just a noisy racket immediately afterwards. And then on your opponent's turn, you're spamming all of them. That's sort of another way that you can play it, right? Because again, it's like you really can only think about the first two in terms of your quote, like plan around. You can't really plan around 3. So once you get to the point where it's like once noisy racket is going to be your third cast one, realistically, you should probably also just do lethal surprise before and just do a 3 and a 4 instead of just a 3, right? Because a 3 and a 4 is more likely to get some value than just a 4, right? So there does come a sort of a tipping point where, you know, you're going to like save everything. You're going to go venom encrusted weapons for your first one, and then you're going to go all the way to noisy racket for your second one, just to try to maximize that, right? But we'll see. This is going to be a really skill testing army, right? Because even now, like I could just keep talking about all the possible combinations of these dirty tricks that you could use against different kinds of armies and how they'll play out. I'm sure that it'll play a part in my How to Win with Cruel Boys series, right? I'm sure that the actual faction ability sections will be full of just like how to use these dirty tricks to your advantage. It'll be something that new players do really poorly, right? And how they use their dirty tricks, and part of that also just comes into understanding what kind of people or what kind of units your opponent has, right? That'll also change how you feel about how you use dirty tricks during the game, right? Very, very strong. The way that, like, when I really think about concretely how they're going to be used, really, really strong. Yep, you just don't rely on them. Maybe that turn 1 sneak you can sort of get away with, right? You can like a super sneaky, you know, so you can move that unit of Gut Rippers up to be more aggressive, or you can throw that unit of Hoggrots onto the objective way over on the side just to be annoying to your opponent. But after that, it's like the pace of the game, the dirty trick use is just going to be very skill testing. Also, if you go first, as a final point before I move on to if you're going second, there's throughout the course of the game at any given point in the game there's an 83% chance that you do have venom encrusted weapons on a unit if you go first, because it's the first dirty trick that you can attempt. And if you're going first, you'll probably do it every single time, right? Like it's this damage, and you're going to be trying to deal damage to things. So I think that venom encrusted weapons will be cast every single time if you're going first, without a doubt. I think it'll likely be done every single turn, without a doubt. What's better than dealing more mortal wounds, right? It doubles the mortal wound output of reinforced Gut Rippers. They go from 7 to about 15 mortal wounds. So this ability is going to, like, imagine if venom encrusted weapon says, like, oh, if you have a reinforced unit of Gut Rippers, when they attack, deal 7 mortal wounds. It's like, well, seems good. And then we haven't even seen Bold Boys yet. So 6 Bold Boys, when they shoot double their mortal wound output, Lord help us with Sludge Raker. We'll see what the army actually pumps out at the end, right? Oof, oof, oof. So very strong on the play. On the draw, if you're going second, as I was just sort of talking about how good venom encrusted weapons is, now you have your opponent's turn between you and when you get to cast venom encrusted weapons. And that creates a tactical challenge for us. So there's 2 ways that you can approach it. If you're going second, you can kind of just spam all of them. You know, you can try to sneaky on their turn. When they charge you, you can lethal surprise, you can noisy racket, and then by the time you get to your turn for venom encrusted weapons, now you're on a 5-up. So you're going to do a 5-up venom encrusted weapon, a 5-up sneak, a 5-up lethal surprise, and a 5-up noisy racket. And you're going to get some of them. You're going to get something, probably. You might get 2 if you're lucky, right? The alternative is you do as little as possible with your dirty tricks on your opponent's turn so that you can have either a 2-up or a 3-up venom encrusted weapons and then spam the rest. So if you're going second, I think you really sit down and you look at the board state and you think to yourself, what am I really going to need on my opponent's turn? And I'm going to try to only do one. I'm going to try to do one because I want to have that Venom Encrusted Weapon opportunity on a 3-up at least. And then if you're like behind, right, then maybe you need to do a bunch of stuff on your opponent's turn, like Sneak and Lethal Surprise and Noisy Racket, right? And then it's like, well, but now the probability that my Venom Encrusted Weapons is up goes down significantly. Probability of Venom Encrusted Weapons down to 66%, and this is if it's on a 3-up. So the average won't be 66%. It's going to drop to quite a bit lower, you know, because there's going to be, this is if you only do one. And I think that you're more likely to probably do 2 on your opponent's turn rather than 1. So we'll see how good Venom Encrusted Weapons is. You know, things like this will depend on how good these different dirty tricks actually turn out to be, like in the way that our army works as a whole. But I'm very excited to find out more. I'm very excited to see. And so now I feel, like I said at the beginning of my journey, I was sort of skeptical on them. I essentially saw them as unreliable and too random, is how I saw them. And I kind of feel like if I'm going second, I kind of still feel that way a little bit. Like there's still a little bit of that left in me, that like dropping down to 66% kind of hurts. Because again, if you're going second, like maybe you can do nothing on their turn, and on your turn you can have that Venom Encrusted Weapon on a 2-up, and then go the rest of your turn with the rest, you know, just spam everything else or whatever. However, like there's less to spam on your turn. On your turn, there's only 2, really. And then maybe the racket, maybe the surprise if they're countercharging you, you know, but it's like you're going to cast less on your turn. Generally, I think, obviously. So, the Sneak is the one that's kind of done everywhere. So there's still a little bit of that sentiment left to me that it's a little bit too random. So going first is going to be a big deal, I feel. Probably. I think you'll probably cast more if you go second. On your turn, you Venom Encrusted Weapon and Sneak, and then you cast all the rest of them. You just do the rest of them. You're going to Sneak again, and then you're going to Surprise, and you're going to Racket. So that's a total of 5. On your turn, you could also just Racket on your turn as well, if you needed to. So you could probably get, like, 6. If your opponent makes you strike last, you can strike them last too, right? So suddenly you're not strike last anymore. I think that we've seen quite a number of strike firsts and strike lasts. You know? And then if you go second, you're going to try to do 1 on their turn, and then you're going to do Venom Encrusted Weapon, Sneak, Surprise. So you're casting like 5 now. You're using them 5 times. And then when you start going to 6 times, just like if you go first, you start to lose that Venom Encrusted Weapons a lot of the time, right? Because you're doing 2. So you really want to do 0 in their phase and then 4 in your phase. So you get 4 with a high probability of Venom Encrusted Weapons, or you get, you know, 5 with a reduced and 6 with an even more reduced. So I still feel that way a little bit about it after kind of breaking it down like this, how it's going to play out. That could be an interesting niche for Manok to Cunnin, not give you +1, but give you +1 if you're going second. He probably would be bad, right? Anyway, that's what I got to say. Like, subscribe. Wah.